the happiest people in the world are people that are present, right? Unconsciously, I've always been somebody that has been the live for today, fuck tomorrow, who cares, go hard, have fun, stay up late, have the extra drink, go on the vacation, like just live it up. All right, episode 16 of Pursuit of Balance. We're going to talk about longevity versus vitality. Are you adding more life to your years, or are you adding more years to your life? A conversation that I always have with myself, and I always talk about sharing. And I think I've talked about this maybe on the last 2 or 3 episodes of Pursuit of Balance. Like, oh, this is an episode I want to talk about. I don't view this one being long because I think it's going to be more straight to the point, and obviously trying to find a balance between these two things is obviously going to be what I'd probably share about the most, hence the Pursuit of Balance name. So I want to talk about this because I think, for me, especially since the pandemic, I've gone through a lot more quote unquote biohacking or longevity kind of changes in my life to really enhance that. I had a natural, as far as like my career goes, I think that the training shift for me was probably when you think about like longevity, right? Training for me was something that really changed quite dramatically, I would say, over the last like 5 years. Some better, some worse, and I'll explain on that in a second. But, for me, like at a younger age, like having grandpa pass away when I was like in elementary school, then having my uncle pass away when I just got out of high school, and like having a little bit of those health scare from like my mom's side. I was like, well, like guys on my mom's side died pretty early. Like, I hope genetically I'm not there. So I want to take care of myself, right? So like the health and longevity was always something that was kind of implanted into the back of my head, right? But then training, like obviously having injuries. So I had like a lower back injury from like that CrossFit competition when I was 19 or 20. And then I had a knee injury that stemmed from that. And I kind of on and off have dealt with this back injury for pretty much my entire life so far. Who knows? It's probably something I should get more of an expert opinion on. But I will say from my own experience, like my favorite person I've ever worked with was Justin Brink, Dr. Brink with, sports med chiropractor. I don't even know if he likes to go by chiropractor anymore. So sorry, Justin, if you don't. But he was the person that I probably was like in the best place with, right? As far as like some of the work he would do, but more importantly, like understanding the work I needed to do to be able to keep that pain at bay. And more importantly, be able to move pain-free and move confidently, right? So training was the thing that really, I would say, was the first like transition in life of like, okay, I need to think about life in a little bit more of a macro point of view of like, what does the future look like for me, right? Because when I first started training, both with bodybuilding, men's physique competition, and CrossFit, when I was doing that, I didn't view my training as a longevity tool, right? I viewed it as a way for me to look really good, to feel confident in my own skin, because like, obviously at that age, I think everyone wants to look good. Doesn't matter if you're trying to get a boyfriend or girlfriend or just feel good about yourself, but like there's a lot of ego around training. CrossFit was kind of not necessarily an aesthetics chase. It was more of a performance chase. I want to be stronger. I want to be faster. I want to be more mobile. And no matter what, I mean, I think with functional lifestyles overall, with like our intent methodology and just approach to programming, is I would love to find a balance of all those things, right? Like I would love to look good. I would love to be able to perform at a good enough level with strength and speed and endurance and mobility. But more importantly is I want to feel good, and I want to feel good for a very long time. And that requires me obviously training in a smarter way to think about long-term, not just short-term. So I have good energy. I'm not always injured or sore all the time. And that I feel good, most importantly. So I'm not like in pain at all, right? So finding a balance of those things, I think it is very seasonal. Like I will say, I always kind of joke around that I'm like the weakest one on the team. So like, when I think about like the comparison to just the coaches that are here at Functional Lifestyles, they're in much better shape than I am as far as strength, as far as speed, as far as all those things. But I also don't think as competitive as I am, I don't look at it as something as like, okay, I want to be there right now. Like there's little things that I want to dial back down. I'm obviously getting back from a honeymoon a couple weeks ago. I still feel like I look like a croissant a little bit, right? So I need to tighten it up a little bit. But overall, I think like I don't have, like we have a lot of coaches in a few weeks or probably a little over a month doing like a high rocks competition, or I had a couple coaches that just did have a triathlon next week. Cisco just did a marathon a few weeks ago. So like there's all these competitions that these coaches are doing. And I used to be fueled by that, right? Coming from sports and athletics, coming from doing men's physique competition and CrossFit competitions when I got out of school. I always use competition or the training for a competition as the motivation towards my training. And then I opened up the gym, and then my training and kind of motivation changed. I was like, I want to train to kind of maintain what I have. I never felt, I mean, I don't want to say never. Like I would say for the most part, I always felt pretty secure about how I felt with my training, as far as how I looked, my strength, my speed, my athletic ability. So a lot of my motivation was more towards like, okay, I really just want to like be able to keep as much of this as possible. And more importantly, I want to train to feel good. Now, I will say this last year with the wedding and the honeymoon, not to make an excuse, I've kind of been a little easy on myself, right? So tightening it up for me, I think is something like now that I have all my big events in life between opening up the gym in the beginning of the year, getting married, doing the honeymoon, like I really just like can focus on, staying in my routine and my structure. So to come back, right? Come back, longevity versus vitality. Longevity is this idea of thinking in the future and thinking about how can I optimize the length of time that I have with the thing or life or whatever I'm trying to chase, right? Vitality now is the exact, I don't want to say exact opposite because I think vitality creates longevity as a byproduct of it. Vitality is how do I add more presence and how do I add, like as I use as my opening quote, how do I add more life to my years, right? During the pandemic, having all that time together, I bought a sauna, I bought the cold plunge, I bought the red light therapy, I started reading a bunch. That got me in the habit of just reading, period. How do I change my nutrition a little bit? The supplements that I was adding in the routine. I really started wearing a Whoop, wearing the Aura Ring, wearing the continuous glucose monitor. And I see this with clients all the time just because we live in the tech area, the tech capital of the world. So a lot of people are using technology, using supplementation, using their training approaches and how to optimize, their aerobic capacity and their VO2 max and calorie restriction and keto and all these things that we kind of change around our lifestyle to optimize for living a long time or optimize for longevity. But what I see is a gap, and I don't want to say, well, I mean, whatever. I think I see this more with other people than I do myself, is what I was going to say. But I started off kind of my journey in the pandemic of like trying to approach longevity, right? Unconsciously, I've always been somebody that has been the live for today, fuck tomorrow, who cares, go hard, have fun, stay up late, had the extra drink, go on the vacation, like just live it up, right? At the end of the day, like life can be long, can be short, but life can also be very unpredictable. So trying to predict the future for planning to live to 90 to 100, 120, 150 years old, whatever people talk about on the internet nowadays or whatever goal you might have for yourself, I think is a commendable feat to approach, right? Like we should be approaching life with this idea that I will get a lot of life out of it if I optimize my lifestyle around it. But I think the sacrifice of vitality, I think is wrong, in my opinion, right? And as always, I'm sharing my opinion. You don't have to agree with it or not. But I think this idea that, like, why would we sacrifice the well being of today to go live for tomorrow? Because then when you get tomorrow, you're going to live for tomorrow. So for me, it's like presence is always something I talk about as such an important piece of life, right? The happiest people in the world are people that are present, right? People that spend time with their family and their friends, people that have purpose in their work, people that take care of their health by moving and exercising and eating and well, right? People that sleep well, people that manage stress. And I think, yes, there's parallels between optimizing for vitality or optimizing for longevity. But what I don't like about the longevity part of the conversation is longevity is optimizing for tomorrow, right? By sacrificing a little bit today, right? And I think about that with business, right? Like, and once again, as always, there's a balance between these things. Like using money to just keep saving it, to reinvest in the business, to just grow it for tomorrow. There's a balance of also like, well, you also should be able to enjoy yourself too, right? Like I talked about this last week's podcast, talking about like what I learned from Italy and what I think, we can learn from the Italians and what also the Italians can learn from the Americans and pace of living, style of working, all those kind of things, which kind of carries over to a little bit of this week's podcast because like, yeah, there's things that we can learn from both sides of the conversation, but like, what are you optimizing your life for, right? Would you rather have a life where you live a really, really long time, but you sacrifice a lot more in it? Or would you rather have a life that maybe could be long or maybe not? Like, don't think about that as much and just live, right? Like I think like just the idea of living and the idea of life is something I keep coming back to on as many episodes as I talk about, as far as my messaging goes, as far as what I talk about with my friends, as far as what I talk about with my clients, what talk about with the team is like longevity should be something that we're all shooting for, but I also don't think that that should be the byproduct, right? What we should be shooting for is right now, the present moment. What can we do to optimize for feeling good, right? So I want to kind of go down just a couple lists of examples, right? Like when you think about, let's start with the nutrition first, right? Nutrition for me is something that can be very robotic, right? You can be counting calories, you can be cycling calories, you can be doing carb cycling, you can be doing keto, you can be doing intermittent fasting. You can do all these things to optimize health, longevity, right? Or you can also eat a little bit more intuitively, eat whole foods 70, 80% of the time, cook at home, eat with your wife or husband, eat with your kids, go out to restaurants a few times a week, stay out a little bit later, have an extra glass of wine. And then, have your little indulgence, but like just being aware of them. I think like just prioritizing the quality of where the food's coming from and how you're going about your eating. Like those would be two examples of like someone that both people are eating well. One's going to be stressed out if they really they miss the plan a little bit, or they go off the beaten path, or they have their dessert, or they stay up a little bit later. Their circadian rhythm is supposed to be, I'm supposed to be in bed by the time it's 10, versus like, oh, once or twice a week, I'm up a little bit late and just kind of enjoying time with the family. And that's something I think for me, when I view like my wife's family, obviously being a Sicilian and Italian, I have a lot of friends and just the Mexican culture and heritage. Like, I think the idea of like appreciating family and time together. And when you look at that, the well-being, I think I view that as a much happier way of living, right? Or like being around the people you want to live. So on the sake of nutrition, when you think about vitality versus longevity, of like, yeah, you can do all those tools, but also like you can make life a lot easier and less stressful if you just really prioritize eating whole foods and let that be just an unconscious way for you to improve health, right? I think we're like, for me, my nutrition advice that I can give everyone is yes, counting calories works. Yes, weighing food works. Yes, carb cycling, calorie cycling works. Yes, protein sparing works. Yes, keto works. They all work. But I also view it as unsustainable to most based off the idea that it's too much work around the organization and structure. You also could go to the grocery store or farmer's market, walk there, pick your own food, cook at home majority of your nights, right? Have a light breakfast. So like, eat more intuitively and eat like foods that come from planet Earth. And unconsciously, your body will be exactly where it needs to be, right? The reason why most people in America are unfortunately screwed up in the nutrition is because we're eating processed foods, we're eating barcodes, bags, and boxes. We're eating from there. I'm sorry. We're eating it from DoorDash. We're eating out at restaurants every day, but we're not eating out at restaurants for a social aspect. We're eating out at restaurants just to give myself a quick little bite from food because I don't have time to walk to the restaurant because I'm so busy working and I'm stressed out. Those are different lifestyles, right? Like if you're eating the way that America has set us up for convenience, you're going to get in trouble from a health perspective. But then we look at sleep, right? Like I kind of touched on this for a little bit. Like sleep is something that should be the most important part of your foundation for your health because that's where all the recovery, that's where, your body from REM and deep and the restorative stages of sleep that we get, fighting disease, fighting cancer, everything that obviously good sleep quality provides us and quantity provides us. But then it's like, okay, like, can I be someone that just like stays up every once in a while and still lives a long time? And the answer is definitely yes. Like, you don't need to be this robot that wakes or goes to bed at 10 p.m. and wakes up at 6 a.m. every single day, right? Like on an alarm clock, on a system. There's this longevity guy. He was a tech guy that sold for however much. And Brian Johnson, some of you might know, and he spends like it's 7 figures. He spends like 7 figures on his health for longevity. And I look at him and I'm like, that lifestyle does not look appealing to me. And I even looked the way he looks. Like I'm like, he kind of looks like a ghost, a vampire. Like he avoids the sun because he doesn't want, whatever it might bring. And his diet is full of hundreds of supplements and pills every day. And who knows? Maybe he lives to 150. Maybe he dies at 70. We have no idea yet. Then you look at all these pictures of like the Italian guy drinking coffee at 10 p.m., smoking cigarettes all day, laying in the Mediterranean Sea, working, just kind of living life, enjoying life, right? And it's like, who's going to live longer? Who's going to have a better well-being? That's subjective. I can't make that opinion because that's not my life. But viewing that is like, okay, the next part would be like, how is exercise, right? Vitality is enjoying your training, right? Like, I think the most important thing for sustainability that I always like to preach to people is you need to remember that the enjoyment is the sustainability. You cannot have sustainability, or for most of us, can't have sustainability if you don't enjoy it. Like, I enjoy my work. This is why I can do it for a long time. I love my wife, which is why I'm going to be with her forever. I love a lot of things in my life which make them sustainable based off the love, right? The love or the sustainability, I'm sorry, is a byproduct of the enjoyment and love towards it. Doing it for a means to an end, doing it to live a long time and to sacrifice those things. And I will say this might be controversial, and I don't want to just dig anybody that is doing this for their health or because they deal with an addictive personality. I have two of my best friends that are sober. I actually don't view sober as healthy. I'm gonna go on record and say that. I think like the idea that avoidance is the answer to life, for me, doesn't make sense. I think the idea of moderation is the thing that really makes things successful, right? When I think about balance, a lot of people in the business world or just life in general talk about balance is bullshit. Like, in order to be good at anything or successful at anything, you can't have balance. You need to sacrifice so much. And I'm like, well, yeah, if you want to do it really, really fast, sure, right? But I think it's like if you think about moderation, you think about playing this game in a long period of time, and you think about the enjoyment of it, like you could do all those things. You can get rich slowly over time. You can be healthy. You can enjoy all these things. Like there's ways to do it. I think the way to do it is through moderation, right? Now, I don't want to say from that statement that I'm here promoting drinking for people. I think obviously moderation is also a little subjective, but like for me, it's like it's such a bonding part to my family. It's such a bonding part for my wife, and it's just like such a social thing. Like, I think about all the people that are sober. They're like, oh, we had both of my best friends at this wedding, and I remember both of them was like, I remember feeling sad looking at them. Like I'm like everyone's dancing, everyone's having a good time. They're kind of just like sober. And it's like I've been that person when I did like show prep and I'm not drinking, and you're kind of like around everyone else, and they're like, I'm not really having as much fun. Well, it's like, well, yeah, they're maybe a little bit more under the influence, but that's something for me. It's like you should be able to like let go every once in a while. You should be able to enjoy that, right? Like the same thing with work. You should be able to take vacations. You should be able to take time off. Like there shouldn't be such a rigid structure around living, right? And don't get me wrong, if there is a problem, if there's something, I know my wife probably listening to this is going to be rolling her eyes because I give people a hard time for this all the time, and I don't want to promote it. I'm just saying that there needs to be moderation in life, right? Finding moderation is the answer. Avoidance will never be the answer. Um, so look, those are a couple examples, right? Like I think about like what is longevity, what is vitality? Vitality is the thing that I will always promote the most, even though I think personally I went through a period of time where I was sacrificing vitality for longevity, right? I remember like my sleep. Like I was just so particular about these things. Now I think that the biggest thing is like understand that there could be this perspective change too. That like I can optimize longevity through vitality, even though I can also make vitality an important thing, but don't ever let it get in the way of today or the moment, right? Like now I think when you view your life, if you have a lot of like, if I'm saying this way, right? Like, okay, every once in a while you go to a dinner and you stay out a little bit longer, or you have a night out, or you have a wedding, like those are moments where I think you should be able to enjoy yourself on vacation, things like that. Now, if you're doing that every single day and you're always tired or you're always hungover, you're always eating like shit, that is different. Obviously, that requires some awareness and change around it. Um, but I think that's where, the hard part of this conversation for vitality is like, well, it feels much better not working at all, or it feels much better just door dashing all my food. Like the convenience in the lazy approach is really what screwed up America a lot from a health perspective. I mean, like, and that's where I think this conversation can kind of get, a little misunderstood is like, I don't want vitality to be the thing that I'm saying, like, just be lazy and pick convenience. I think vitality in the enjoyment of something, like I was actually thinking, and this is a weird thought, but I was thinking about this last night. I was like outside doing my thing and I was like just staring off, thinking about, show notes. What am I going to talk about for this episode? How am I going to steer it? I don't know how I got to this thought, but I was like, if I had one wish in life, I think it would be to like just know everything, right? Like I think just like knowledge for me is always something I've seeked craving learning and knowledge and just like kind of that expansion of life of like if I could just be one of those people that can just know everything off the top of my head. Now, when I think about that, and like, trust me, I'm getting somewhere with this point. Education, I think, is something we're just getting more and more access to with AI and everything that's happening, right? And just technology is just giving us like unlimited access. Implementation and execution of it is the vitality for me, right? Like implementing things that I learn makes me feel good. Dopamine comes from the chase, not the catch, right? Like a lot of times in life, we don't realize that the thing that is the most enjoyable and the thing that is the most fun is the seeking of the thing, is the doing of the thing, right? It's not getting the thing, right? It's working towards a goal, and it's the work that's done towards the goal. So I think kind of wrap that up is like when I say that I don't want vitality to be a reason for convenience of like, well, it makes me feel really good just not having to cook, right? It's like in reality you're wrong because you doing the thing even though it's hard is the thing that makes it. I don't know what the adjective would be for that, but like when I think about vitality, I think it's the work that's being done that makes it exciting, right? And that's something that I kind of want to just like leave as a reminder is like I think that's where the vitality part of the conversation can sometimes get misunderstood is like, okay, vitality is adding more life to my years, right? And I think there's a balance between it, right? Like, yeah, every once in a while going out to a restaurant instead of cooking at home could be better. But I think finding the balance between those two things is important, right? So that's what I want to wrap up today's episode is like at the end of the day, longevity is important as a focus for our foundation of living, right? Like we should be really paying attention to how we sleep and circadian rhythm. I do view those things as very important things. I do view like the way that we look at food as far as like managing calories to create a deficit, having optimal macronutrient balance, obviously getting the right micronutrients in, balancing out periods of fasting. I think those all are important ways of living. But I also think that there's ways for us to kind of just do that a little bit more intuitively by changing the way that we view food, by viewing food as if it came from planet Earth, if it's walked, flown, or swam before, and I kept 90% of my selection of food around those things, your body intuitively will do those things, right? Like listen to the signals that your body is giving you versus having to go off a plan all the time, right? There's going to be days where I wake up where I'm not hungry. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm not going to force myself to eat. I'm just going to skip that meal, right? There's going to be times where I'm a little hungrier, but as long as the quality itself doesn't change and doesn't get off the beaten path, then it's fine to eat a little bit more or it's fine to eat a little bit less, right? There's going to be times, all those things. So I think like the intuition, as long as the quality is there, will always be correct, right? It's very wrong. Where I think intuition can go wrong is when you're feeding yourself products and poison, right? Like if you're giving her stuff that's literally designed by big food companies to actually be more enhancing on flavor, not be as satiating. Because think about it, if I owned a big food company and I want to sell more products, I want you not to be full from it. I want you to crave it like a drug. Well, that's what these fucking foods are built on. So that's what I mean, right? It's like, think about the longevity part of it, but also like if you really think about how do I approach my life intuitively, that's where I can get more vitality. It's like it's more rewarding. I always say that like to Nikki when we go to the farmer's market, we're not the best at it, but I would say, maybe once or twice a month we're going, when we're home at least. But like there's something about walking 20 minutes to go to the farmer's market, shopping with all our food, picking out our food ourselves, and walking back. I'm like, this feels primal. Feels rewarding, right? Or if someone has a garden, like when we were in Italy a couple weeks ago, it's like one of the hotels, like all the vegetables came from the garden. Like there's something that just feels good about that. That is something that's going to help with vitality and longevity. Training, right? Like training is something that like you should have enjoyment from it, right? You need to make movement a bigger part of your lifestyle. You need to make sports and hobbies, I think, a bigger part of your lifestyle because, for me, I love skimboarding. I love snowboarding. I love going mountain biking, right? And sometimes like I prioritize my strength training or my functional training over those kind of things. When in reality, I think from a vitality perspective and a health perspective, it'd be more important for me to just prioritize the other way around, right? So when you guys think about your sleep, when you guys think about your stress management, when you guys think about designing your lifestyle, when you guys think about picking your work, understand that when you put enjoyment on the front end of it, right? Longevity is kind of a natural byproduct of it. But you need to make sure that your enjoyment is not sacrificing too much of tomorrow, right? Like we don't want to eat away everything from tomorrow to live today, right? That's where the balancing act of these two things. But I always think you should put way more eggs into the present moment versus the future moment. Future planning will always be important. It doesn't matter if it's a financial talk for investing for the rest of your family and your lifetime. It doesn't matter if it's your health, whatever it might be. But always remember that like don't save your money to retire. Also enjoy your money to live today. Go on those vacations, take the extra days off, like do those things to enjoy life, right? And I think about that the same thing with health, right? Like there needs to be always this kind of balancing act, but at the end of the day, my biggest suggestion I can give everyone is make vitality the chase, right? Make that the thing that we're trying to live for, is the enjoyment of adding more life to our years, right? Longevity will always be important, but sacrificing life just to get more years, in my opinion, probably not going to be the way to live, right? All right, guys. Well, hope you got a little value out of that one. As always, I will see you guys next week. Take care.